And the guys that were older than me would say, I don't get it. Like, I'm dying. I'm about to go on stage. I'm so nervous. You don't care. Why don't you care? And I realized early on that you're never going to please everyone. But they paid. They paid to see a show. I'm doing something that not everybody in that audience can do. So whether they like it or they don't like it, it's still what I'm going to do. I don't mean this to sound arrogant, but I've never actually went on an audition in my life. If somebody wanted to work with me, they already knew what I did and said, hey, will you come on in and do this? I grew up on Kiss, so much so that I saw all the tours and collected all the things like that. So I have, just by the years of following them, almost like an encyclopedic knowledge of their arrangements over the years.
I want to rock and roll all night and party every day. Can you guess who my next guest is? I know you can't. Maybe you can. Anyway, I am Mike from Tribute Band Sessions. Thanks for joining me for another episode. This is going to be a great one. But before we get into it, can you please hit that subscribe button? We really appreciate it. Any comments you guys have, you want to see any guests, let us know. And then also like this episode. It really helps our channel out. Today's guest, we have Billy May from Kiss Nation. Oh my God, I can't wait to talk to him. He's got such a great career with Kiss Nation, his own personal career, and he just launched One Live Kiss, a Paul Stanley solo tribute. Oh my God. I mean, I know I'm going to run out of time. I know I'm going to have to do a part 2 with Billy, and I'm so excited. So don't forget, again, subscribe, like, comment to our channel, Tribute Band Sessions. We're excited you're here. And Billy, where are you? Let's go. Come on. I can't wait to ask you questions. Billy May from Kiss Nation. Welcome to the show. How are you, buddy?
Great. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Oh, my God. It's my pleasure. I'm a huge Kiss fan, dating back to even being managed my own self by one of Kiss's earlier tour managers and all that good stuff. So we have some Kiss blood in both of us somehow. You know what I'm saying?
Long-time Kiss fan as well, obviously, right? I was one of those little kids in the 1970s that they went, the older kids went, oh, Kiss aren't that cool anymore. But I've been stuck with them all these decades, so... And
look at them. They stuck with it too. So,
right, absolutely.
Even though they say goodbye, they come back somehow, some way, which is great for all the fans, because who doesn't want to see Kiss?
Too.
Yeah, exactly. So, tell me about your earliest memory of hearing Kiss and what drew you to them. I'd love to know that inside info.
The funny thing is Kiss was so big in the 1970s that I was a fan before I developed long-term memory. I was a baby. I was an infant. They were everywhere in the 70s. If you turned on the TV, they were there. If you went down the aisle in a toy store, they were there. They were on every magazine cover. So I don't remember exactly what drew me in, but I do have these great memories of growing up watching Kiss Meets the Phantom, or when Kiss would come on TV, I would run across, the house to go see them on the television set, or even one of the old commercials for the record. You get so excited, So I don't remember where it started because it's just been a constant in my life.
No, I mean, you grew up with it. And speaking of growing up with it, give us a little bit of your own musical background. Let's back up for a second. Tell us a little bit about how you started, where you're from, and all that good stuff.
So I never wanted to be in a tribute band, right? I always did original music. And I did that probably for, until I was about 30. Right. And every review we ever got when we put out a record or anything like that was, hey, the singer sounds a lot like Paul Stanley.
Right.
Yeah, a little bit. Right. And I took it as a compliment, but sometimes your blessing is your curse. There's already Paul Stanley. We didn't need RC Cola. You have Paul Stanley's Coca-Cola. You didn't really need what I was doing. Right.
Exactly.
So when that band broke up, my phone started to ring all the time saying, will you come out and play Paul in a tribute band? And I went, well, sure. I know how to play all the songs. I know how to sing all the songs. It's my favorite band, my favorite singer, my favorite songwriter. Sure, that'll be fun to do because I always still wanted to be on stage. So I started doing almost like a mercenary thing. Like any band that would call, I would come in and say, well, this is the show that I do. Do you want to do it? And I would fill in for them. Once Kiss Nation needed to fill in, I just haven't left. I've been there for 20 years or so now. Yeah.
So Kiss Nation's been around a long time, and obviously you did a fill-in, but was that your formal audition, or like what was the audition process like of like, you know, joining them?
I don't mean this to sound arrogant, but I've never actually went on an audition in my life. Right? If somebody wanted to work with me, they already knew what I did and said, "Hey, will you come on in and do this?" There was the only process was I said, "Hey, these are the songs that I know. Do you guys know this? This is how." Because you know, if you're Paul, you're the front man. You kind of have to taper that show the way you want to do it. So I never wanted to come in and say, well, I'll do your show. If you want me to be your front man for the night, well, this is the show and this is how I do it. Do you want to do that? Do you know these songs? And, you know, we basically just got on the phone with each other and they said, okay, so this is what it's going to look like. Got up on stage, did it cold, no rehearsal. Haven't left.
And is everybody from Kiss Nation from the New York area, or what's the background of the band?
We're all New Yorkers. At some point, you know, Ruby moved out to New Jersey, but, you know, we were all basically New York guys.
Yeah, so yeah. It's local.
I'm a native New Yorker. I grew up in New York. I've lived in Brooklyn my whole life.
Yeah, well, New York, I'm from Philly, so kind of neighbors there. Yeah, close.
Absolutely.
Maybe different sports teams, but we'll leave that for another episode. You know what I'm saying?
But we both love Rocky.
We
right?
love
we
it.
both love Rocky. It. Yes, absolutely.
Rocky and rock and roll. So, you know, there you go.
Yeah.
In your opinion, what makes a band in the tribute scene credible?
I play in a Kiss tribute band, right? And I think the problem, and I don't really follow what other Kiss tribute bands do, because I feel like Kiss, and specifically in my case, Paul Stanley, wrote the book on what we do. I do an interpretation of it. Everybody else is entitled to do their interpretation, and that's awesome. But every now and then, I kind of get embarrassed when I say, oh, I'm in a Kiss tribute band, because I think people sometimes hide behind the makeup. They hide behind stage props, and they're not good musicians. If you're not a good musician, don't do a Halloween show. Just go trick or treat, you know? But the number one thing is play. It's, you know, Kiss are deceptively simple, right? When you actually listen to Kiss and you listen to the harmonies that break down and what the guitar parts are doing and things like that, I'm not saying they're a complex band, but I'm saying if you're not a good musician, you're not catching it. And if you're not catching it, it sounds like a garage band. I don't want to put a garage band on stage because by definition, they belong in a garage, right? So that to me, what makes you credible is the musicianship. Can you sing, right? Can you play your instrument? If you can do those things, then by all means, do the rest too. That's great. But if you're just doing the show,
Yeah, you know what's funny? You talk about that. So back in the day in Philly, and I don't know, you might have been at the show, but Kiss played this small club called, I think it was called
Trocadero.
Yes.
The Trocadero.
Yes.
Yeah,
were you at that show?
Yeah.
So I was at that show. So to me, you look at that and you go, they sounded freaking amazing.
They blew the doors off the place. That was the thing. You could strip away everything from Kiss, and they brought the house down. You don't need the bells and whistles.
Exactly. And I said, that's a real band right there. You can add all the extras, which make them just an unbelievable show. And I've seen it a ton of times. But that shows that they know what they're doing. They know how to play their instruments. Exactly what you're saying about being a good tribute band, you know, or being a good band just in general. Forget about the tribute thing. But being a good band is knowing how to play your instrument correctly, the parts correctly that you're doing, and deliver to the audience. You got that. Then you add the what I call like the fluff on it.
The icing
like
on the cake.
Run.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right. I agree.
And you're right. That's what definitely separates, you know, those two worlds. You know, we had a guest on the show from a band called Get the Lead Out, you know, big Led Zeppelin band. And, you know, he had a great line, Paul, and his name is Paul. And he said, you know what makes the difference between us and maybe some of the other Zeppelin bands, not putting anybody down, because you could do whatever you want. You're a band, you're trying to do what you do. He goes, but we take our time, study the music, try and replicate it as best as we can. And when we go out the door onto that stage, through the house speakers, it sounds like the record. It really sounds good. And that's what they try to deliver to the audience. Your band, I've watched online, the same thing. And I think you're right. In your analysis, that really just makes the difference between a good tribute band and a garage band. How about your stage show? Let's talk about that for a little bit. Is there items in your stage show that you've collected over the years that either are from an original Kiss show, or let's talk about that for a little bit, like from the lighting standpoint? Do you try and mimic the lights, back in the 70s? They had that in my brain. I don't know if it's accurate, but the purple kind of hue lights. It was always that Kiss lighting. So how do you guys emulate the stage show? Forget about I'm sure you guys have similar guitars that are,
Oh yeah, I play all Paul's guitars.
Exactly, but from the actual stage props, if you want to call it that, to the lighting.
Sure.
How do you work that? What's your show like?
So I remember I would see photos of Kiss tribute bands all the time, and they would try to load in, you look at what the Love Gun stage was, and they would try to load in these mini little staircases and things like that into these small nightclubs. And it looked silly to me, right? It looked like, like Munchkinland version of a Kiss stage.
It was Spinal Tap.
Yeah, it's right. It's a tiny little 18-inch Stonehenge. What are you doing? Right? So I didn't worry so much about the props. And as you get onto bigger stages, you need props just to fill out what that stage looks like. So we thought to ourselves, what are the key elements when people think of what a Kiss stage looks like? What's the first thing that comes to their mind? And it's the logo, right? So you try to emulate that big lighted logo, right? And it's walls of amplifiers, right? People think of the walls of amplifiers with Kiss a lot because everything else, is specific to a tour. Right?
Absolutely.
So I'm not putting a Sphinx there, Right. It wouldn't make sense, right? Which was a great prop for that tour. But if I'm going out and doing a tribute show, I would think, hey, walls of amps. I would think, lighted logo, maybe banners, things like that. So easier things to bring in and not have it look like Spinal Tap on the stage that you're playing.
Yeah, kind of like for people that have seen the original Kiss show, and then they come out and see just a small little prop. It's just kind of where what you're saying, the wall of amps, the Kiss logo in the back, and then you guys just performing.
Create the feeling. The same thing that Kiss did when they did the reunion tour, right?
Yeah.
Everybody had in their head what the Love Gun show was like. But by 1996 standards, that 1977 stage was tiny. So they had to recreate and make it feel like this is what you thought you saw 30, 25 years ago, whatever it was. So what we do is we go out there and go, okay, we're going to make it feel like this is what it would feel like if Kiss were playing this stage, right? I'm not going to try to take a $2 million stage show and put it, like this $10,000 version on a tiny little stage and think, oh yeah, it's got the same show. No, we don't. Right? But I'm going to try to create elements there that make you go, hey, that feels like Kiss. And that's really what we're trying to do. When you come to see us play, we just want you to sit in the audience and squint a little and be taken away and go, yeah, I feel like I'm at a Kiss show. That's all.
I love that. Yeah, I love your approach to that because that makes the show, to me, more realistic, where I think my eyes would get drawn to a small little prop and I wouldn't get it. I wouldn't be looking at you playing, you know what I mean? I'd be looking at going, man, that is a small prop, the whole show.
Yeah, like they would have they'd have these 8-foot cats on the sides of Peter's drums. So I'm going to take 2-foot ones and put them out there. Yeah.
You just need some people
Maybe
dancing around them and you're good. You
know?
In the early days of your career, the biggest technical and confidence challenges, that's something like a lot of people, even the young kids watching this, are going to want to know, hey, what was it like starting out for you? And what were some of your hurdles that you needed to, jump over?
I grew up, like I said, I grew up on Kiss, right? So the next thing that I grew up on was the Beatles and the Stones. And then after the Beatles and the Stones, I grew up on The Who and Led Zeppelin. So, but I was young. So everybody that I hung out with was much older because my tastes were what maybe my older brother or sister or something like that generation would have liked. So I got a fake ID, and at 15 years old, I started playing nightclubs in New York City with older guys.
Right.
And I was never nervous. I was comfortable on stage. And the guys that were older than me would say, I don't get it. Like, I'm dying. I'm about to go on stage. I'm so nervous. You don't care. Why don't you care? And I realized early on that you're never going to please everyone. But they paid. They paid to see a show. I'm going to go up and do it. I'm doing something that not everybody in that audience can do. So whether they like it or they don't like it, it's still what I'm going to do. So I'm going to go up there and do the best show that I can. And I didn't worry about embarrassing myself. Now, that being said, if you take me off stage, I'm socially awkward. You know,
right?
Yeah, it's more difficult for me to connect on a one.
And most entertainers are.
Yeah. Like Johnny Carson used to talk about this, right? Like Carson would be the most, charismatic and personable guy on the Tonight Show. You took him off that stage and put him, just in a normal setting, and he was uncomfortable. And that's how I am, So I was very comfortable on stage, off stage, not as much.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many entertainers. I had a lucky in my life to meet a ton of rock stars and stuff like that. And, I would say a majority are uncomfortable and awkward off stage. On stage, you're like, wait, was that the person I was just hanging with backstage? Because it's completely two different people. And
completely different.
And you know what? I think that, from even myself being, a drummer, I feel more comfortable behind a kit than I do hanging out just with 10 people and trying to keep a conversation going. Sure. I almost want to go in my own corner and just hang out. But that's a personality thing. Yeah. That's a personality thing, and I totally get it. So I could see the older guys that you play with were like, wait, how does this kid have zero nervousness in him? And it's you hit it right on the head. That's perfect. For the tribute bands, let's talk about that for a second. What do you think the core elements that make a tribute show credible, versus just a cover band? There's so many cover bands, and we'll get into what makes a tribute band, what makes a cover band, and all that. But in your tribute performances, how much freedom do you allow yourself to deviate? I know where, Kiss has done so many different live shows, the Unplugged, just different things. Do you guys have certain ways in the band for tempos, intros, song arrangements, even audience interactions? Do you kind of go, all right, we're going to do it from the live album, this is the way they talk to the audience? How does that whole production work in your world?
So,
and that's a lot of elements that I asked for.
No, but I gotcha. I grew up on Kiss, so much so that I saw all the tours and collected all the bootleg concert films and audio and things like that. So I have, just by the years of following them, almost like an encyclopedic knowledge of their arrangements over the years and how they changed, what Paul's raps were over the years and how they changed. And I just take the elements that I like that were my favorite, and I put it into the show. So I could tell you what arrangements we're doing and where we take them from. I don't like doing an arrangement that is my own arrangement, because what they want to hear is they want it to be as close to Kiss as it possibly can be. So I'll give them something that Kiss did. When I do the Paul raps, I don't study them or write them out or rehearse them. I just have this Rolodex of them in my head where I go, I remember he said this, and it just kind of comes out naturally. So there might be words in between that flow them into each other, but I know what I'm saying, where he said it, and why I'm saying what I'm saying in those parts. But it's all authentic. It's all something they played, they said, they did, then we do it. I've seen other bands or heard of other bands that kind of like to do it their own way. And I'm not, as if I were in the audience, I wouldn't want to see that. So I don't want to do that.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's what people are paying for. They're kind of paying for you to give them like almost as if they're seeing Kiss. They want to, these are fans of the band. So they almost know stuff better than us, sometimes,
Sure, of course.
And you want to give them the best show possible. So I appreciate that from you being a performer and studying and knowing and after all those years, like you said, it's a Rolodex in your head. I totally get that, which is great.
You just know it.
Yeah, and that comes off more authentically, from the standpoint of you're not reading a cue card that says, "Hey, everybody, welcome to the show," and then, that's kind of like they're like, I
was talking to somebody the other day, and they said, "Well, how did you choose Paul Stanley?" I didn't choose Paul Stanley, right? I do this because it's what comes naturally to me. I like Paul Stanley because I can relate to Paul Stanley, right? So as much as I love Gene Simmons, I would not be a good Gene Simmons on stage.
Of course.
So I have this kind of knowledge of it that I feel like I can just kind of let it flow through and play that role. If I had to work at this, I probably wouldn't be doing it.
Yeah, and I'm sure it's the same with your bandmates and stuff like that. They each have their own roles. They, have perfected it. It's, something that just rolls off of them. So I totally agree with you. Have you ever had a fan like push back on your performance and say, "Hey, that wasn't exactly like Paul"? I mean, you played a lot of shows over the years.
I had one guy complain that my eyes weren't the same color, and another guy complained that I didn't have enough chest hair. And I went, okay.
You're like, okay, well, if that's the two things, you didn't say anything about my talking, singing, guitar playing, or any of that. So I'm good.
Nobody's perfect. So, it happens. You're never going to please everybody, right? There's always going to be somebody that's a critic, or you should have done this song instead of that song. Everybody wants to hear the deep cuts, right? But nobody can agree on which deep cut to play. So you go up and you play a deep cut, and then everybody goes, "Well, you should have played that one instead." Well, if everybody agreed on the deep cut, it'd be a hit.
True.
Right?
That's totally right.
So
No,
you can't please everybody. Yeah.
You can't. You just go out there and do a great show. Yeah, no, you can't. From the tribute band scene, is there something that you think is misunderstood about a tribute band, in your opinion, after doing it all these years?
Yeah, I think the biggest misconception is when people come over and they say, "Well, you're a tribute band, so all the hardcore fans are going to come see the show, so you should play all deep cuts." And that's not the case. When you go out and you play a state fair, or you play a theater, or you play a casino, you know who's going to see that show? Casual fans, or you're just regular fans, the same people that would probably buy a ticket to see the real band. It doesn't necessarily mean they're this hardcore, diehard fan that wants to hear the B-side, right? It means you have to play the songs that the audience is going to react to. And it's hard to convince people that that's the case. But when I look out into the crowd, I see it.
Listen, I've seen Kiss so many times. I can't even, maybe in one hand count deep cuts. I mean, they're playing all the what people want. You know what I mean? And
that's what makes it a good show.
It is, and for me as just an audience member, it never got tired. I was never tired of it. Opening up with Detroit Rock City all the time, never get tired of that
because it's iconic.
Rock and Roll All Night, the closer. It's like, come on, that's, and just watching them, for me, just brings back, Kiss was my second concert growing up. That's what I saw. My first one, my brother took me to, my older brother. He's like, "I'm taking you to a concert," and then he took me to the Beach Boys. It's like, I mean, it's good. It ain't rock and roll.
It's cool.
So then,
right? Yeah.
Yeah, and then my friends
Kiss
were like,
is really
"Let's go
your
see
first
Kiss."
concert.
Yeah. So we saw Kiss, and I was just like, "Holy shit, this is what I want to do."
It's another experience altogether. Sure.
Exactly. Nothing taken away from the Beach Boys, but yeah. So you guys have been around for a while and doing your thing. Do you guys still actively rehearse? Do you rehearse new songs? Do you do it at sound check? Talk about the rehearsal process with you guys, because every band has something different. They do it at sound check. They have a place they go to. How does that work in your world?
I think we wait till the very last moment and go, we know these songs. And then we
Okay.
run through a couple of rehearsals and we go, yeah, we're good. We got it. At this point with Kiss Nation, the only time you really need to rehearse a lot is if you say, hey, we're going to completely revamp the set. And you really don't do that until you go, okay, well, we're going to start to play the same venues again. But with something like Kiss, where there's so much of the set that Love Gun's never leaving. You know,
Exactly.
There's not much that we have to really tweak.
There might be a song or two, like you said, deep cut that you might add in.
Yeah. We want to work out the harmonies or brush some of the rust off, something like that. With One Live Kiss, the Paul Stanley tribute show, it gives me the opportunity to do stuff off the solo album. You don't get to hear that often. Or it gives me, the opportunity to play, with no Gene songs in the set. I'm playing a lot more of the Paul songs you don't get a chance to hear every show. And then it's a new band, right? So I have to do a little bit more rehearsing with them, and that'll go, over time. It'll just get to the same point where it is with Kiss Nation,
So talk about that for 2 seconds. Let's talk about that because that's interesting to me. So it's an offshoot of Kiss Nation. It's your own project. And where do you want to take that to? Do you want to try, and obviously you have to work around the Kiss Nation dates. Is that something you see yourself doing a little bit of a tour with, maybe go overseas with it, or, what's your vision for that project?
I always say the same thing about either band. I'll play wherever they bring me, right? So if there's a reasonable offer and it makes sense, I'm going. I'm there. One Live Kiss is unique. It's different. There's not another Paul Stanley tribute out there. And I don't think that there's many people that could do what I do as Paul Stanley. A lot of people, you can play Paul Stanley, you put the wig on and you put the star on and you do the whole thing. But, there's few and far between maybe that could go up there and deliver the show the way I could without a costume. So I think it makes it unique in that sense. If you're a Kiss fan and you just want to hear some good Kiss music, you'll come down, you'll check it out, and you'll go, gee, I never saw anything like that before. So it's just starting now, and dependent upon the reaction, we'll see. I'll take it as far as any place goes. We all have, in either band, we all have full-time jobs, right? So you just, somebody's not available at one show, somebody's available in the other show, you just go out and you book accordingly and you play where you can play and you have a good time. None of us are, looking to make this, we're not looking to become millionaires by doing Kiss tributes, right?
Sure, yeah.
That's their thing, right?
Yes.
But we could go out and have a good time and see some people and put some smiles on people's faces.
And you get to play rock and roll, Yeah. What for marketing for this particular band that you're doing, the project, do you find with today's marketing, it's, social media, TikTok, all that stuff. What do you find works the best for either or Kiss Nation or the solo project?
It's pretty much the same. I do a lot of social media where I'll just, post up ads and videos and photos and things like that just to talk about it, generate interest. But, today's marketing, it's light years away from like when you and I were growing up.
Absolutely.
It's two totally different things. So we're dinosaurs, you know what I mean? And we're trying to just kind of reinvent the way that we do things. When people come up to me and they talk to me about my favorite YouTuber, it just... I don't get it. It just goes right over my head. But that's why when, is an opportunity to do something like this is great. Doing this show is going to reach a lot of people, be able to go out there and say, oh, wow, I didn't know that, there's a Paul Stanley tribute show, or, hey, Kiss Nation's doing this thing in Vegas with Kiss. That's going to be awesome. And we'll get out there and reach a lot of people that way. So, like I said, we're dinosaurs. We're just kind of figuring it out as we go, right?
As you go, you just figure it out, then get on stage and do the show for fans. That's what it is.
I figure as long as I'm playing, as long as I'm still performing, I'll figure it out.
No, you're good. So being the lead singer in a band, I love asking this question because, myself, I'm not a singer. You don't want me to sing. I never probably ever want to sing. But you being the lead singer, doing these shows, you have to take care of your voice. How do you handle your voice fatigue, on some shows? I'm sure there's been nights where you're like, oh, shit, I don't know how I'm going to do the show. How do you cancel a show? Do you just, the show must go on? How do you work that?
No, you go on. I'll tell you, it has happened to me where, I got on stage and I'm about 2, 3 songs in and I realize my voice is gone because things that I would normally hit easily, it's just not there. But what saves you is you have a good sense of melody. You have a good sense of, the different arrangements over the years of the songs, right? So you know how to say, I'm still going to sing this song in a recognizable way. I'm still going to sing this song in the melody. I know where I'm not going to push my voice above and beyond. And you just you get through. Now, the audience doesn't know. But psychologically, in your head, during that show, even though you're getting through it just fine, I remember thinking to myself, it may never come back. Am I going to hit that note again? Right?
Yep.
And is this over? Where did it go? And It's happened once or twice since then. And it's the first time's the scariest time. And when it happens after that, you just go, okay, I know what to do here, and I know it'll be better. But, you take care of your voice. You don't stay up, you're drinking Jack Daniels till the sun comes up, right?
Yeah,
water,
unless you're Motley
right?
Crue, and maybe some of the members still do that,
Yeah, but, and you hear how Vince sounds, right?
That's true.
But Vince sounded like that in the 80s, too, and a lot of people give Vince a hard time. I still have a great time at Motley Crue shows, and I'm glad Vince is there doing what he's doing. So I'm not knocking Vince, but he's always sounded that way.
Yeah, I've seen those guys throughout the years, it's Motley Crue, it's rock and roll. They love the party.
It's what you get. Yeah.
So, exactly.
But you get a little bit of sleep, you drink some water, you'll be okay. You'll get through it.
Yeah. So going through the years of the KISS catalog, how do you guys how often, number one, and we talked about this where you keep the staples in there, but how often do you change your set list?
If I know I'm going back to the same venue that we played, I try not to do the same show exactly. So, but you probably don't cycle through those venues until a year or two. So it's like a normal band. But we're doing 3 nights in a row in Las Vegas at the KISS Cruise Landlocked in Vegas.
Yes, I'm excited for you guys for that.
Yeah, it's awesome, right? They have us doing Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, but it's a captive audience, right? It's all the same people. Right? So I don't know how many people will want to see all 3 shows, but if anybody does want to see all 3 shows, I worked it out where I would say probably, a good portion of the show changes each night. So there will be something that people go, oh, they didn't do this on Friday. Oh, they didn't do this Saturday. Or I wonder what they'll play on Sunday. So we'll change it up a little bit that night. But that's just from the luxury of having the musical muscle of doing this for 20 years, where you can look at each other and go, oh, we can play Parasite. That one will work, and we'll drop out War Machine that night or whatever it might be, So you can throw in those alternates. Like one night we'll do Making Love, the next night I Want You.
Yeah, I was curious about the KISS Cruise in general, that whole 3-day. So let's talk about that. How did you guys, even get selected to do that? And let's talk about that whole event. I'm curious because I thought I've seen them do their cruises throughout the years, but this one was a total surprise to me. A landlocked. Well, okay.
The surprise is there's no boat.
Yeah, no boat, and but you still get the
surprise.
Yeah,
that's the surprise. We did not lobby for it. We didn't ask for it. A friend of mine that works for the band called me up and he said, "Hey, I think I might have something for you." I said, "Great, just let me know whatever you need because we're always game to do anything, especially if it's something that the band wants, We're always want to be accommodating." And they said, "Well, we're doing this thing out in Vegas and the guys that are running the show want to talk to you." And I said, "Great." They got in contact, said that they were interested, put them in touch with our agent, and that was as simple as that. What I heard was, and I heard this later after the fact, is, they had got together and had a meeting with, different people and said, well, what are some of the aspects that we would like to see at this? I think they were calling it KISS Army Storms Vegas at the time. And a bunch of the people that they had there said, well, hey, I think KISS Nation would be a great addition. So I want to thank all those people that mentioned our name. That's flattering, and I really appreciate them looking out for us, and it's an honor to be part of it.
No, I mean, wow, it is an amazing event. You know, I was looking at a lot of the stuff online about it, and to me, it just looks like a whole weekend of just Kiss, you know, which is amazing, you know?
Of Kiss silliness, you know?
I love it.
I think Gene's throwing picks, and Tommy's tasting wine. I forgot what Paul's doing, you know?
Oh, my God, it's going to be great. So will you guys get a chance to, you know, interact with the Kiss members? Is there any kind of like hang out at some point, or it's just unknown for you guys?
Yeah, it's all unknown. And, you know, I've met everybody in that band a million times since, you know, the first time I met them was in the mid-'80s, you know. So it's not like I need to go knock on the dressing room door and, you know, say, hey, you want to autograph this. I haven't asked anybody in that band for an autograph since the early 90s, right?
Right,
so,
gotcha.
You know, if I see them, it'd be nice to snap a picture or something like that, but I'm not bothering the guys.
No. You're not chasing them down the whole way. Wait.
Right,
you know?
Right.
No, but it's. I mean, I'm assuming you're going to see it. I'm pretty sure they might even peek their head in for your show. You know,
it would be. You know, I mean, listen, whatever they do, it would be awesome. If they do, they don't. It's cool. I would like to peek my head in for their show. So,
absolutely. What is their show? What are they doing?
Early. They're doing, I think they do a sail away show, they call it, even though it's not sailing away. So they're doing an acoustic thing on Friday. And then on Saturday, they're doing some kind of jam thing because I don't know who's playing drums, but Eric's not there. Tommy's there. And they said they're going to get up and play for like an hour and a half, something like that. But that's right before we play across the hall in a different theater because we'll go on at midnight that night. So I got to get in makeup early so I can sneak in and watch them in makeup. I've never done that before.
That's going to be interesting. How long, your makeup process, how long does it take you to do your makeup?
Everybody else 2 hours, me a half.
Oh, how does that happen? You just got it down?
You know, it's a star. You know, I know how to make the star. You know, I have a process to it, and I'm just used to it, and I can do it in about a half hour. I take my time with it and do it probably in 45 minutes to an hour.
Right.
But if I had to rush, I can knock it out in a half hour or so.
Yeah, that's better than me. I'd have it all over my face, and I'd look like crap, you know?
Once you get, like, the pattern, the process of exactly how you're going to do it down, it's usually fine. The whole trick is in the angle brushes.
Yeah.
Once you know how to use the angle brush, you're golden. But if you're there like it's a coloring book, you're in trouble.
Yeah, you know, I think there's a couple of videos online of, is it Gene that does the makeup on a video or something? And his daughter's there. I think I watched something
they're
like
all
that.
there putting makeup on. Yeah, I think there's one of Gene and his daughter. His daughter's putting the powder on his face.
Exactly, yeah. I love watching that kind of stuff.
The powder is essential.
Oh. Well, isn't that? Yeah, I would imagine that keeps everything together, especially during the set.
That keeps it all together.
Yep.
Yeah. It's like cold gin.
Being like, you know, myself, you know, in production and music and stuff like that, I'm always curious about bands when I go to see them. Hey, are they, and I know this is going to be a touchy subject, but are they using backing tracks, pre-recorded tracks, all that good stuff? I'm sure you guys are doing the live thing because, you know, it's Kiss, you know? I could be wrong. You could correct me if I'm wrong. But, I mean, do you have any feelings when you go and see bands that you go, hey, this is more of a live thing, you can't play it live, you know?
Well, I've seen bands that use backing tracks, right? And they sound great. Right. And I realize I'm having a good time at the show, and I would rather them sound great than not sound great. So anytime I get into rehearsal, I think, why can't we put backing tracks of the, you know, it'd be so much easier. And I think if we, you know, had the technology, I wouldn't be opposed to certain things being on a backing track because it's a show, right?
It is.
It's right. That's what it is. You want to deliver the best show that you can deliver. So, yeah, you know, I mean, people know what they can do and why they do make certain choices. I'm not here to criticize anybody else, but right now I don't use any backing tracks. If the opportunity presented itself, sometimes I go, that'd make it a little easier. I'm not really that opposed to it.
Yeah, and I think it's part of the production, exactly like what you said. It, like when you're in the house, you know, most of the audience, they don't know if you're using tracks or not. They just hear the sound. It sounds super full. You know, and there's certain things with certain bands, you need it. Like a full orchestra section, that's on a track,
Put it on a track, right?
Yeah. So I think
Right.
like there's certain things that, but I know that's like a topic of discussion. But if you really like know the production of music, you'd be open to it and knowing that like that's the world we live in.
I think musicians like you and I understand it. I think fans have a different concept of what it's like to be a musician and what being a musician means. And that's why sometimes they get offended by it.
Sure.
And they mean well, too. But I think if they had a greater understanding of what it was, I get it, Like there's certain parts in songs where I think to myself, gee, I'd love to have that piece on tape playing in the background because it would fill it up, right? But, okay, well, we don't have a 7-piece band, so that's not there. Right.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. And, I think for each band, it's a little bit different.
Sure.
So, speaking of like, we talked about the set list and stuff like that, but what is your favorite song to perform? You have to have a favorite, and, I need to know what it is.
And people ask that all the time, and I always answer.
Oh, well, then I'm going to take it back. I'm going to ask your least favorite.
I'll do that too.
Okay.
I always say my favorite song to perform isn't always my favorite song to listen to, because what I perform, I'm getting back from the audience, right? So I love the reaction. So I know I'm always going to get a good reaction with Detroit Rock City, but Detroit Rock City is also a song that I love, right? But, some songs that I love that I get to play, I like singing Hotter Than Hell. It's just a fun song for me to sing because vocally, it's just, I like that feel. Songs I hate.
Great song. Yep.
Songs I hate. Most of the Gene songs. No, I love it loud.
Typical Paul Stanley answer there.
I love it loud. I'm just bored, But when the crowd gives a good reaction, then I get into it. I'm sick of rock and roll all night. I am, but the crowd gives a good reaction, so I would never drop it, right?
Of course,
it's not like one of those. Oh, we're going to get rid of it, you know. But I tried to pull "Lick It Up" out of the show for a little while because I thought, you know what? Maybe I'll swap out "Lick It Up" and I'll get to do "Tears Are Falling" and it'll be okay. And I realized that "Lick It Up" was just an essential part of the show that people just love. So I'm like, I have to put it back in. And it was funny because Ruby, the guitar player, Ace, he looked over at me. He goes, "You're going to put this back in. It's not staying out long." And he was 100% right. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, some songs are really staples in the show where you get that audience, you feel it, and then if you take it out, you're like, oh, I'm missing that. I traded this for this. Yeah, it's not getting the same reaction when you swap it out, and then you're like, okay, yeah, that was a wrong decision.
That one's going back, right?
Yeah, no, you know quickly, believe me.
Yeah.
From the business, I don't know, with 4 members of the band, is it you or is there another person that primarily handles the business of the band?
We have an agent that handles most of the business, and then she works with me primarily.
Okay. And so you guys have like more of like a certain model, because I know each band is set up differently, where they have like a revenue model for tickets, for merch, for private bookings, even like getting as far as like, because it's Kiss, the licensing and stuff like that. When you do a t-shirt, you have to be, super careful. Is that negotiated or talked about within the band, or is it you and your agent that talk about that? Because there's a lot of elements to that stuff.
Yeah. We stay away from merchandising, and a lot of tribute bands don't. And Kiss ones don't, but we stay away from merchandising just out of respect to Gene and Paul.
Okay.
Right? Because I don't see a reason that anybody, first of all, it's kind of them and generous and gracious of them to allow us to use, it's their trademarks. And we know that. So at any point in time that they say, don't do this, I will happily say, thank you guys for a good run and whatever you'd like, that's it. Right? So I would never want to put their image on things for just monetary compensation for me. It's their trademarks that should be there. So I stay away from that. So it's really just the performance that we go out and do. And in something like Kiss Nation, unless you're hiring fill-ins, and I don't like to hire fill-ins, we really try to share things equally because that was the model of Kiss.
Yes.
In the beginning.
No, yeah, no, that's a smart move. Like that's actually a take that I really haven't heard a lot on this show, which I love, and it's the respect that you're giving to those, guys, from Kiss and the brand and all that good stuff. A lot of promoters out there, I feel sometimes they undervalue a tribute show. You know what I mean? They don't see...
Right, but then I stay home. It's okay if you undervalue it. I will stay home. I have a full-time job. It's okay.
Yes.
So I take the gigs that I go, that's fair, and then I go out and play it. But I don't need to do the gigs that I go, that's not a good deal. I'm going to stay home.
Yeah, that's not what I'm doing. So... on being, throughout your tours that you've done with the band, is there any like amazing moment that sticks in your head, like a positive moment? You go, man, that was a great show. Or I looked to the side of the stage and this person was watching me. Or is there any kind of like one moment that sticks out during your career in Kiss Nation?
So I'll tell you the thing that I always think of as being impactful is sometimes we'll do, all ages shows. It's not nightclubs. It's, theaters and state fairs and things like that. And families will come, right? And they'll bring their kids. And it's akin to when, you would go to Disneyland and see Mickey Mouse. So I see this kid's eyes light up and they have Paul Stanley makeup on and they want to come over and take a photo with me. And I realize in that moment, I am Paul Stanley to that kid, just like Mickey Mouse is that kid. We know it's a guy in a suit, right? We know I'm just dressed up like Paul. But to that child, it's magical. To the child's family and parents, I was just able to give that child something that warms their hearts. That's the best part of being.
I love that answer. That's a heartful answer right there, and I love it. Good for you. What about like, do you guys do meet and greets?
Yeah, a lot of times people want, you're in the costume, so people want to come in and take the picture with the costume and stuff. And it's funny because in some cities there's a line and, people, and it's like the backstage at a Kiss concert. They come in, they stand between us, we take the photo and they move and the next person comes in. And then in other cities, it's like Spinal Tap in the record shop.
Right. Yeah.
You go, oh, here we go. So you never know what you're going to get, Yeah. Sometimes it's a success. Sometimes maybe not.
Part of the business, I guess,
Yeah. But that's okay.
So I always like to ask this question because we're going to have, a lot of like young musicians that are watching this looking for advice because tribute bands, the scene tribute bands is just blowing up, more than ever, good, bad, or otherwise. But, there's going to be kids watching this go, I want to start a tribute band. What kind of advice can I get from somebody like you? What does Billy say that will, listen, if you're going to do a tribute band, here's what I suggest you do. What would you suggest?
As an individual, right? Do everything you can that is short in supply and high in demand. And what I mean by that is, if you can sing, sing. If you can sing backgrounds, sing backgrounds. If you can work out harmony parts, work out harmony parts. These are all things that are, vocals especially, are short in supply, high in demand. If you can play keyboards, great. How hard is it to find a keyboard player? If you're a bass player, don't learn to just ride the root note and lock in with the kit. Be a melodic bass player, right? Learn how to play all those parts, right? Guitar players are everywhere, right? So guitar players know what the guitar player needs to do. But fine-tune who you are as a guitar player, right? It's not all about your volume. It is about your finesse. It is about how you work with the rest of the band. All those things are short in supply and high in demand. And it's like what I said before. It's the difference between when you're playing in your bedroom or you're playing in a garage or you're putting it up on a stage. So really learn those nuances of what it's like to be a great musician. And that will serve you in whatever you're going to do musically, right? Like I know if I'm looking for people to play, if they come in and say, yeah, I sing background vocals, that's a plus. right?
Yeah.
That's somebody I want to have come back, right? So anything short in supply, high in demand, do it.
Man, that's a great answer, because I feel that, when doing this podcast now, I've done my going out and seeing so many more tribute bands than I've ever seen before, because I want to do my homework. I know what's going on.
Yeah.
But to tell you that I'll go and, I'll be like looking at my watch, even though I'm doing my studies and going, I got to get out of here because these guys didn't do their homework, or the opposite. I'll go and I'll see, I just saw this Boston band that literally blew me away. I went up to the guitar player. I said, dude, you have every single sound down, and I'm a huge Boston fan. And I was just like, you studied that. He's like, oh, it wasn't overnight. It took me about a year to get all these sounds down, program them all, then go and learn these leads that are double, triple tracked, back in the day. And then he goes and he does it live, and it sounds killer. And they put the time and effort to make that show great. And they're only like I think it was a 5-piece band. They didn't have a big band, Right. And
they made it sound huge.
It was huge. The lead singer just sounded phenomenal. And he was like, when he's actually from New York and he moved to Florida, but he was telling me the story of when he was in New York, he was just playing in all different kinds of cover bands, but never knew his voice sounded like Boston, until people started to go, do you ever think about doing a Boston band? He said, nah, and then he moved.
That's similar what happened with me.
Yeah, and then he found people and they were like, hey, we're doing this Boston band, you'd be great. And then boom, and then, and then the rest is history for his band. But it is the story, what you said. So for Kiss Nation, do you guys have any plans you look to the future? What are we going to do in 5 to 10 years? Do you have any plans for anything that you're trying to accomplish, looking to maybe do, we talked about doing some stuff overseas and stuff like that. Is there any kind of plans you guys, are looking to do?
It's a tribute band, right? So it's not like I'm thinking to myself, well, hey, we got to put out a new record and then we're going to tour.
Of course.
And do this, right? It's a different mindset entirely. I feel like if I didn't think we were good at what we were doing, I wouldn't do it. So as long as I still look and go, hey, we're pretty good, I'm just going to keep going out there and putting smiles on people's faces. Whether I do it with Kiss Nation or I do it with One Live Kiss, I will get out there and take the opportunities as they come. Obviously, the bigger and the better gigs there are, that's great. We've got a casino show coming up in Arizona. We're working on some stuff. Hopefully One Live Kiss will come out to Philly soon, right?
I can't wait. Well, yes. I just, I got to get out and I'll look at the whole tour schedule and come out and see you guys, But I have to, because I watch you guys online and now talking with you.
Whether it's
I'm a
Kiss
huge
Nation
fan.
or One Live Kiss, you're on the guest list.
All right, well, I appreciate that, and I'll be the guy in the front cheering and saying, "Where's that little stage prop that I wanted to see?"
At least we'll have one. There'll be one guy there.
Right. No, that's awesome.
Yeah, if we could bring it overseas, I've always wanted to see Japan, and the audiences in South America are just absolutely crazy. So all of that would be great.
Yeah, I think you guys would kill it over there. And I don't know what's going on overseas for a Kiss tribute band. I'm sure there are, but coming from America and stuff like that, I think it's just a different perspective.
I would just be thrilled to play Japan or South America. Those places.
No, that's awesome. So I have to tell you, we are out of time. This flew by, but with that said, we have to do a part 2 because I have so many more questions. I'm looking at my list. I'm like, oh, I didn't get to ask this, and this. But we're trying to keep the show at a certain time, and we always run out of time. But you've been amazing, and I have to ask you. So, tell me where everybody can find the band and even the solo project.
Yeah, KissNation.com is alive and kicking. Just go there to find Kiss Nation. You can find me on social media, right? So it's just go to Billy May 74, and that'll be Facebook or Instagram, and you'll see all the stuff for Kiss Nation or One Live Kiss right there.
And everybody, you got to go check them out, check the band out, go see them live, go support them. From what I've seen, amazing. And look at this guy. He's Paul Stanley. Come on. Billy, thanks a lot.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah.
Hi, buddy.
Thanks for listening to Tribute Band Sessions podcast. Please don't forget to subscribe, like, and drop a comment. Want more info? Sign up to our mailing list at tributebandsessions.com. It's the best way to stay in the loop on upcoming episodes, special guests, and behind-the-scenes stories, and all things tribute bands. And don't forget to follow us on all our socials at Tribute Band Sessions. Thanks for watching.